Welcome to the World Movers Podcast. I am your host, DJ Angelfire, and with me is a co-host. We've interviewed her before, Rubarcode. She's back, we're back, and most importantly, we have a very special guest today, Sloe. They've made a lot of albums and EPs. I've found some of their 3D work on Instagram, and both me and Rubarcode are big fans of their stuff. So why don't you kind of explain who you are and kind of get into how you got started and all that?
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you so much for having me. I go by the name of Sloe. I am a visual and music artist, and I kind of started this Sloe project around this time last year. I've been producing and releasing music for a while now under just my birth name, but I started this Sloe project it kind of began in 2020, right around when COVID started happening. I started getting kind of into animating. Just as I was continuing to work on music, I sort of started accumulating just a bunch of songs that kind of fit this kind of weird, moody, kind of fun, wacky vibe. And so I started animating around those songs. It just kind of naturally progressed. I just sort of got an album worth of material together. I released my first single, started kind of from the ground up, getting this new project kind of kicked off. And so, it's been about a year of that now. I released an album last fall, an EP kind of at the beginning of this year, and then just a couple days ago released another single.
Now, before the Sloe project, what was kind of your goal? What sort of sound were you going for, or was it more just kind of a process of experimentation?
Kind of when I started, I was like 16, I think, and I was sort of just making terrible trap beats because I think I had this dream of producing for a rapper or something. I don't even know. I was just sort of messing around, having fun with it, and kind of just as my musical interests developed, kind of some of the more alternative fringe genres of electronic music that I'm just inspired by today. I think my musical goals kind of shifted around a bit too. I started taking it more seriously. I started, just experimenting a little bit more, trying to make music not just as like a beat, just something that is, cohesive and satisfying to listen to. Just, at the end of the day, I want it to be fun and interesting and just kind of unique. So, yeah.
It's definitely the music and the visuals pair really well together. And as you said, I can get this moody, wacky, fun vibe from them. I love it. There's a lot of gentleness and freakiness kind of balanced. I think it's a bit like the first sort of thing I could compare it to is it's a bit like having breakfast at dinner time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I was wondering, where does this come from? To cut straight to the chase.
Sure.
Yeah. Where does this come from?
Wow, I have never heard my music described as breakfast at dinner time before, but now that you put it that way, I think that is probably my favorite way it has ever been described, and not just because my favorite time to eat cereal is actually at dinner time. But no, that's a great question. I guess just that uneasiness is just kind of an emotion that I just am really drawn to, especially in the music I listen to, and it's just such a compelling sort of thing to chase after. So I guess it just is interesting to me, and so that's just what I kind of am drawn towards as I go about creating something.
Yeah. I see you've got all these characters as well you've made,
Yeah.
and yeah, what they're really funny. Is there a narrative behind them? Yeah, you're sort of world building with them, and there's definitely this sort of like gormlessness about them. They're characterized by gormlessness, I
Mm-hmm.
feel, which is really, really compelling in sort of how you relate to animals. I was
Sure.
wondering
Yeah.
why you chose these characters.
That's a good question. I guess just I am very much drawn to like interesting character designs and creatures. Like I'm a big fan of those like Nintendo games that will just have like wacky critters in them. Like especially
Yeah,
like uh, the Pikmin series. I'm a big fan of and stuff like that. My first album, I like going into it even before I finished it, I knew I wanted it to sound like sort of a creature feature, and so it just kind of my first critter is actually my profile picture right now. It's like a sink monster. From there, it kind of spiraled, and all the creatures were themed around like kitchen utensils that had been transformed into these just wacky little creatures. And it was really fun because I would be kind of working on one of these critters, not really knowing how it would kind of end up, and I'd like have people walking in the room like as I'm working on them, and just like helping me like figure out like what their personalities would be and what I should change. My little sister actually helped me name a lot of them and just helped me kind of figure out what their role in this universe is. And so yeah, it's just a ton of fun. And then especially I think my favorite part is just when I kind of have an image of them and sort of upload it to social media. I feel like I'm playing the part of this like zoo curator or something like that, just kind of like
yeah,
introducing them as like my friends or something like that, or somebody I'm annoyed with, or
yeah,
um, whatever it may look like. So yeah, it's fun. I've loved making these characters. I think it's really fun tying them into music, and it's really fun just being able to share them. And I like how easy it is to sort of share them with people too, because in the music genre that I make, if I'm showing my friends something, they might not be into kind of this alternative electronic. So I'm not gonna make them sit there and listen to 3 minute tune or something. But if I just say, hey, look at this wacky sink monster I made the other day, and they're like, oh, cool, and then yeah, it kind of gives me an easier way to just share what I'm doing with people past the music. So.
Now I have to wonder, could we possibly see them integrated as part of like some sort of augmented reality, like Instagram filter?
Oh my goodness, that would be absolutely marvelous. I would not even know where to begin in implementing that. But root bar code, I've seen like some of your work you've implemented into augmented reality stuff,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So the number one place to do, actually the only place you can use to make them is a program called Spark AR. Well, for specifically for like Instagram. Um,
Okay.
and there's loads of tutorials. I can send you some resources as well. Um, yeah, it's quite I mean, I guess with everything it takes a while to do, but it's very fun. It's a
Sure.
lovely way to share your artwork with people as well. You do have to make
Yeah.
a Facebook
Yeah.
account for it though, unfortunately.
Oh, that is a
Yeah, you
bummer.
have to sell your soul.
Oh man. But no, yeah, that's really cool.
For what it's worth, I tried, I think, Adobe Spark once, and I have a 3D design that I have that I made quite a while back. I don't even know if I can find it now, but yeah, Adobe Spark is legit. I input it into their system, and it gave me like an animation rig and everything. I mean, this is something that would take me, and I think a lot of people who are new to 3D, it takes you a long time to really get over the learning curve of like animating and stuff. And if you're doing simple objects, it's not too difficult.
Sure.
But when you start getting into limbs and like, facial movements and all that stuff, it gets really hard. And so it's nice with Spark is that they have like an auto rig, so that's cool. But of course, obviously, it can only be used for like web-based stuff. But I think that the Instagram filters are really really cool for that.
Yeah, that's very intriguing to me. I'm already taking mental notes to look into this.
One of the questions I had when looking and listening to your work was, do you have what's the process or ritual behind making, and how do you decide whether to make visual art or music? How do you decide on a day, okay, I'm gonna choose this route?
Sure. That's a really good question. Trying to think. I guess whenever I make something new, I like just don't know what it's going to end up looking like. I think that's part of what makes doing anything creative fun and exciting for me is just like that blank page of like a new Fruity Loop project file or a new character model is just that's like one of my favorite things to play with.
Me too, actually.
So,
I don't do drawings before
really,
making them.
really, yeah.
Do you? You just go
So
straight into it.
yeah, just usually straight into it. I kind of just try to throw everything I can at the wall and just sort of see what sticks. So I'll make a bunch of different versions of. I guess if I'm working with like a new character or something, I'll kind of have the general shape of what I want it to look like, and then usually I'll make the face, and then from the face just kind of go from there. I don't think I've ever done it the same way twice, so I'm kind of like
Yeah.
Yeah, every time is
struggling
like
to put it into words a little bit, but
yeah, like every time is a new attempt to try and kind of get an idea out. Every time you're just sort of starting from scratch, sort of.
I was just going to ask, do you have this sort of improvisational approach with music, or is that more sort of
yeah,
the drawn out process?
yeah. No, I'd definitely say it's just about exactly the same way with music. I might like come up with a chord progression or something ahead of time, just as sort of like I guess just kind of something to build the rest of the track around. But then from there, I'm just pouring through like sound files and synth presets and tweaking those and just yeah, like while making music, I think the most exciting thing is just finding a really, really cool sound. And then the fun part is figuring out how to get this like crazy, wacky sound that you've kind of discovered or tweaked on the synth and just making it work in a song format. Yeah, I definitely like to be surprised by the kinds of stuff I can find while assembling a track together, and generally the songs I'm happiest with are the ones that have those kind of exploratory elements to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the more that you add to the track, the clearer your vision of what it's going to be. I mean, maybe sometimes you're a little bit more like, okay, I think I kind of know where we're going with this, but like other times you legitimately don't know, and I think that is kind of
Right.
the magic of like digital art is like the more you're fooling around with it, like the more cool stuff you get out of it. I think with like the music I've heard so far from you, yeah, obviously I feel like a lot of people probably draw a comparison from people like Igloo Ghost or some stuff from PC Music.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a very flattering way to describe it. Thanks. But yeah, I definitely, you mentioned like Igloo Ghost and PC music. Like those are, um, those artists and the artists that come from those circles are like my absolute heroes. So, I kind of their sound and the way they've like progressed and innovated in the last, decade or so. Depending on the artist, has just been kind of the reason. Um, I just am so interested in making new stuff, and yeah, so they're heavy, heavy, heavy sources of influence for me for sure, I'd say. But
You feel about the term wonky as a music genre?
wonky.
Because
I
I
know
know
some people
he's
have problems.
yeah. Igloo Ghost is
Yeah,
usually categorized as such.
sure, sure. I know that some people have a big problem with the term. I feel like maybe it was a couple months ago, I saw Flying Lotus tweet like complaining about that term, but I love it. I think it's a great descriptor. In fact, when I sort of started getting into that genre of music, like I specifically remember Googling like best wonky albums
Yeah.
and like seeing like Flume and FKA Twigs and Rusty and Hudson Mohawk, and yeah, I think wonky, whatever you want to call it, but that genre is just that is like my comfort music,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So
How did you find all the stuff in the first place?
when I started kind of getting into um, like listening to music more intently, and just exploring artists, I kind of naturally, just being on the internet, kind of encountered um, Anthony Fantano's, like the Needle Drop channel, as well as review sites like Pitchfork, and I know that kind of that subculture,
Yeah.
a little bit. And so I'm embarrassed to say there was a couple years there where I thought I was really cool because
Oh
I
no.
listened to all the albums that Anthony Fantano gave high scores to. Very, very happy to say I'm past that now, but I think just sort of like exploring that, I think I was just naturally drawn to really cool textures in music. I just found that more often than not, that was happening in electronic music, and specifically like kind of the more left field stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so I think my big, 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 big entry point into that was like Flume, when he came out with the Skin album. That album kind of just it blew my mind. I fell in love with it immediately for the next year and a half. Like I was specifically trying to just completely copy his sound and find other artists that sounded exactly like him, and then
Mm.
from that just kind of branched off into like artists like Arca and like
Yeah. Yeah.
Igloo Ghost, are kind of the two big ones that just completely sucked me in and turned me over to the dark side.
I feel like that like the
For
internet
sure.
really drove like all these tangentially related things into genre that we see today, like the music you're describing, where it's kind of uncanny, it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of dark, and some people do it better than others. I think that it can definitely be cliched, it can definitely be commercialized. I mean, I've seen, like, okay, perfect example, and then this isn't necessarily, this isn't really like PC music style stuff, though I definitely have heard that in advertisements. But I saw this ad for like furniture, right? And the background music
Uh-huh.
sound like it's dark, but it almost sounded like Burial.
No
That don't make
kidding.
sense for like a furniture commercial, but it's like you know what I mean. It's got like those like heavy snares, and the drums and stuff really had that kind of feel where they were kind of offbeat and
Interesting. I've definitely had experience. This genre that you thought was like just completely underground gets completely um, torn apart and ruined by, advertising. And I think it was just the other day, I don't know if you saw it, but like SNL, I think they parodied Charlie XCX's Girls Night Out, and it was just completely it was very, very painful to listen to.
SNL in
Just stuff like
general.
that is just yeah, there's a lot to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally I'll see like they'll have like one skit that like you can tell actually had some talent or tried to do something interesting, but like, I think some entities they're just unable to accept that the new generation doesn't find it relevant anymore, and so they figure if we appropriate more things from the younger generation. And I think it's funny, right? Because you look at these skits and stuff. When is the last time you've seen somebody? I mean, I know there's exceptions, but like by and large, when's the last time you've seen somebody our age doing that kind of stuff? That's not like already like a plant or is like already fed into it. But like somebody who doesn't have a reference, like the corporate bubble, somebody who's outside of that, it just you don't see it because they know that kind of stuff just won't land, and it's only going to appeal to at best it might appeal to like people who are in their like late 30s now, but I just wish that, look, if you're going to do your own thing, that's fine, but don't like try and drag us into it in terms of trying to seem relevant.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head there.
Back on topic, I do have to ask, how did you get interested originally in like animation and like 3D character design? Was that like when you were younger? I mean, I imagine for most people it's always like, oh, it would be cool. Like I grew up with like Toy Story and Pixar and DreamWorks and all that, so like you always saw this stuff a kid.
Oh
Where
yeah.
it's okay, yeah, I want to do that someday. But then you realize, okay, we're now at that point where it's kind of possible. So I'm just curious, that was similar to you, or just like you kind of did it on a whim?
That was very similar. Yeah, I mean as far as actually like creating animation in the way that I do now, again, that's very, very recent. I just kind of started that in 2020. But yeah, definitely. Just like you were saying, I grew up on Pixar. I grew up on Nintendo. I just animation just super, super cool to me, and yeah, it was just kind of always there. I doodled a lot as a kid. Made like stop motion movies with Legos, and yeah, this is just kind of how I scratched that itch that has always been there. So
Nice.
yeah.
There's a game on the NES, I think, called Pluck, which reminded me of your stuff a little bit. I feel like video game covers used to be so much more compelling than they are now, because back then they were kind of trying to make up for the sort of primitive graphics in some ways.
Yeah.
So they really tried to draw you in and give you this really rich sense of the world
Nice.
that it contains, and it was the visual reference really more so than the game. Yeah, if anything, it was more
That's interesting. Why did they stop doing it that way? Because I'm thinking about it now. Like all the games I've played in the last, however long, outside of a couple of like indie titles, like they're all just one character just like staring blankly, like while holding a gun or something, like completely 180.
I guess it's lots of things. I do believe a lot of it is to do with this false idea that the graphics are more realistic. So, and that's the sort of that's the high criteria for a game.
I think too the other factor you have to consider is how people purchase games, where it used to be that in order to generate interest for a video game, you had to have a really cool cover on the front to attract people. But with like Steam sales and all that, you don't really have to I mean, you of course show gameplay, all that, but it's just people are visually oriented, but it's different when it's on the computer. I feel like when you're in person and you're flipping through like physical media, when you see like a tile that stands out to you, I feel like it leaves an impression on you more. Now, when you hear about like another Xbox or another video game for the Xbox, it's just like, okay, I mean, we've already been here. We've already been in this territory, so it's like, when are we going to see something? I mean, I guess the closest we got to that was kind of like Cuphead, even though it was, I think, a bit hyped up. I do admire that at least whatever their motives were, like at least they were trying something that was like, okay, I haven't seen that in a while anyway, something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's just the state of video games now.
It's so hard too, because the way that the kind of just the internet works, and like just sharing your ideas like around, like these kind of big district, like whatever it may be, it's way, 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 way easier to convince somebody that this new, like say Mario game is going to be good than it is to say, hey, I have this new idea. Takes a little bit from this and a little bit from here, but
Yeah.
it's kind of something new. Would you like to try it out? And it's just like the market is so saturated with so many different things that convincing people that this new thing that you have it's just a really tough task. It's a really big challenge.
And just the idea that you can have a game that doesn't have to be like a super simple like indie title, where it's like, okay, here's another Super Meat Boy clone. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, it's fine, but I'm not really of that generation that like played Mario, like the original Mario or all that. Some of these indie developers, it's just like you said, they see the market's oversaturated, so it's like, okay, we just appeal to people's nostalgia. And it's like, yeah, but then, I feel like the first motivation should always be, let's make a fun game. Let's make a game that I'm really putting my all into, and I'm not just being lazy about it. But it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's really difficult to like get a team, go through that process. Like people think, like, oh, you can just sit down and like, Unreal Engine and make a game, and you can. But like, if you want it to really fulfill you, it's not even the technical stuff that scares me the most. It's just the amount of energy and participation that you need. I couldn't crack it, and it's with Steam. I mean, there's new games like out every week. I mean, I don't want to discourage anybody, but it really seems hard to crack through there. Almost harder than music, which seems weird, but I don't know. I feel like, I mean, it just takes. With music, it can just be like a one-man show kind of thing. Although, obviously, you gotta collaborate in one way or another. Right. But with like games, you have to have people who are really there and willing to help you. Yeah, it's difficult to crack.
Yeah, I think
I definitely think you're right there.
There's a lot more sort of restrictions that come with making a game, I think. But yeah, and it's all from the technical sort of esotericism of it. And I mean, my experience of opening Unity is you open it and you put something in, and then about 20 errors appear.
Yeah.
And with music, you can sort of and other art, you can work around that. That there's not these barriers. These constant barriers, and I think that can be very restrictive for creativity. So then they do just sort of rely upon these sort of self-cannibalizing vessels of cartoon characters such as Mario as a sort of placeholder for all of this technical effort that's gone into it. Like the recent Mario games are still sort of, their ambition is to be as imaginative as possible with the layout, and they introduce so many new features every time. but it's always the same characters, and
Exactly.
yeah, they are these sort of empty vessels, I think.
But I feel like the music, the video game world doesn't really favor that in a way. It's more about consistently churning out something that, as you said, has technical effort, has a little bit of interest to it, and just kind of playing it safe. And if you want to have a big budget, that's kind of what you have to do. It seems to me, but I'm no video game aficionado. I could be dead wrong, but I also just don't have a lot of time for that stuff. But I definitely I would love to see more interest in, like, as we talked about, like augmented reality, but like music and VR, like making it easier to have like virtual reality style concerts and all that. Because I see a lot of people doing like IMVU, but I would like to see some kind of platform where it's kind of like Unreal Engine, where it's like I can make my own like virtual concert and maybe work that into full like performances as well in the future.
Yeah, yeah. The the idea of sort of virtually DJing as well is very appealing. But there's just so many technical barriers to being able to do that with autonomy, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we have the technology, just don't have somebody who's interested in making it accessible.
Hmm. Yeah, you might have to spend a whole lifetime making something like that.
Yeah, and I feel like that's true with like 3D creation in general, and you probably noticed this too, Slow. Like, there's a lot of points in creation where it's like you feel like, I know they could do this faster. I know they can make this process quicker. But it's like the community is full of hobbyists who've like been at this, and they're just like, oh, that's the way we've always done it. It's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
maybe that's the way you always done it, but I don't necessarily want to have to mess around with that if I don't have to. So, but I guess that is the beauty of having relatively simplified figures, is you can just spend more time on the execution than like too much time in the concept phase, while still, getting your point across of what you want.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
All right. Well, let's see here. So all right, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a quick break, probably 10-minute break, and then when we come back, kind of wrap up the interview, kind of get some thoughts on where you're hoping to go with your music, and maybe some other questions as well. Does that sound good?
That sounds fantastic, yeah.
All right, see you in 10 minutes.
Right, see you.
Welcome to the World Movers Podcast. We are back. It's DJ Angel Fire and Rhubarb Code with our guest, Sloe. And, when you first started, listening to music, even before you started getting into this, as you describe it, kind of left field or wonky stuff, even before that, what was some of the earliest artists you remember listening to, maybe as a kid, or during, that time between 11, 12, and into your teenage years, you feel like there was a specific artist for you? Because when I was probably that age, the biggest thing I listened to was I don't know if you remember a 009 sound system, but I remember that those videos music would always be in the YouTube tutorials, and for whatever reason that got me into trance music, and yeah, I used to listen to this, and this is back on YouTube where stuff was MP3 quality, so it was not very good, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, what artists did you listen to when you were younger?
Definitely. I definitely most enjoyed a lot of soundtrack music.
Yeah.
I think, especially for action movies. Yeah, Hans Zimmer, the Inception soundtrack, I think was the very first album I bought with my own money. So I definitely connected to that a lot, and also my family just in my house there's a lot of southern rock music too and stuff, and so I connected with some of that, not all of it.
Yeah.
But
I understand.
I think soundtrack music, that was really what I kind of started exploring out on my own a little bit. And somehow that got me to rap and hip hop. I'm trying to make the dots connect in my head, and they aren't. But somewhere along the way, rap and hip hop is kind of where I found myself spending the most time. And yeah, then from there it's just kind of Kanye West,
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
all of his producers on Yeezus and going from there, and yeah, just kind of funny to think about now.
I was sort of really struck by when you described yourself as a zoo curator, and I was wondering, what do you think of animals? What's your
Animals,
relationship to them, and how do you perceive them and want to represent them as? But yeah, in short, what do you think of animals?
that is a fantastic question. There are
Thank
some
you.
animals I love. There are some animals I think are just okay, and then there are
Mm-hmm.
some animals I would not be around if I got paid $1 million to be around.
Yeah.
Um,
Can you give me
I
one
I am
from each category, please?
sure. Okay. I love frogs. Frogs are
Yes.
fantastic. I would buy so many frogs as a pet if my landlord let me keep pets.
Mm.
Um, Animals I tolerate, I think, just kind of any. I don't know. I see a lot of deer in Michigan. They're
Yeah.
fine as long as they don't jump out in front of my car.
Yeah.
As long as they mind their own business, I can mind my own business. No problem there. Then animals I do not like. I guess spiders. I will not tolerate the presence of
Yeah.
spiders whatsoever. Just
Yeah.
no, thank you. You will never see me making a character that looks like a spider. You will never see me looking at spiders. You will never see me. Yeah, spiders. No bueno. No, thank you at all.
How do you feel about
Interesting.
snails, though?
About what? Snails are chill. They just kind of do their own thing. They move slowly. They got shells. They're a little bit slimy, which is kind of unpleasant, but
Yeah.
they just kind of mind their own thing. They don't get in your way much, and
You know, it's interesting you talk about animals and then you mention bugs kind of separately. I know what you mean, obviously, but like, I think it's interesting because that seems to kind of be like people's perception, right? Because like, we're vertebrates, and like, most of the animals that we domesticated are vertebrates. And so, insects and arthropods, by extension of that, are kind of like the closest thing to alien life that we see on a daily basis because they're so like far removed from us.
part of what makes bugs so unsettling too is just you can't like what you see is just their worst features. Like you look at a spider and it's just legs and pricklies and teeth and or whatever those are called. But like you have no way, like there's no face there to like look at and like connect with. It's just
Yeah.
you, like get away from me. Like as opposed to like you come home, your dog greets you, like you can tell that she's happy because she's nice and smiling, and like you can obviously expressions aren't the same as us, but
Feel like with I don't know how if this is verifiable, but I feel like with dogs and cats, they've evolved to be cute. They've got these almost human-like features, sort of massive eyes, mouth and nose in the conventional fashion.
Like dogs specifically developed eyebrows that serve no purpose to other dogs, but the eyebrows are used to
Wow.
manipulate humans. It's actually true.
Wow.
Yeah.
really,
Yep.
that's kind of wild.
The eyebrows are crucial for the puppy dog face.
Yeah.
I wonder if like with that came an empathy from the dog, or if that's something more that we project onto it, because they can read our emotions, and I'm pretty sure bugs wouldn't be able to do that.
Right.
The thing about invertebrates and bugs in general is that, yeah, it's very difficult for them to subsist on land with like a really large brain. So vertebrates on land, they really have to struggle to kind of just survive.
Yeah.
So see, you came into this thinking it was going to be an interview, but you didn't know you were also going to get a free biology lesson too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am 100% here for it. It's been a while since I've had a good biology lesson.
But okay, so we've looked at animals, we've made some conclusions about that. Now I have to ask, what could we see in the future for you in terms of like your music and your sound, and what's the future for the Sloe project?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that if there's number one, any like goal that I have moving forward with the Sloe project is to be, at least sonically, it's to be trying new things and exploring around a bit. I do, as of now, am sitting on quite a bit of unreleased music, and so I'm figuring out the best way to kind of release that into the world. And so I'm planning on doing that through a series of singles with kind of a common theme, and I'm really really excited about it. There's going to be some narrative stuff tied in. It's going to be like all the content isn't going to just be front loaded to the music. There'll be social media stuff too, and
Nice.
just kind of all interconnected to try to connect these different parts of the Sloe project. So what specifically that's going to look like, I can't say at this point. I have a couple of ideas that I am playing around with, but so there'll be that. And just right now, I'm just trying to kind of work on staying consistent just with the content I'm outputting in whatever form, and just trying to, just get my music out there. I've been trying to just like email lots of different blogs and share my
Nice.
music, and just kind of, find that sort of just organic growth that'll give me a little bit more of a, platform to create and share content. So I know that's all very, very vague, but yeah, definitely.
Exciting.
What blogs have you reached out to?
Oh, quite a few. Are you familiar with Submit Hub, like that platform?
I'm not.
No.
For sharing music? Okay. I would recommend not ever using it. It's very distressing, but it's a very good way to reach lots of blogs.
Really?
Yeah, so basically it just like kind of acts as a middleman for communicating with them, because it will like show you a list of all the blogs and like the playlists they run and what their websites are about and stuff. And then you can find ones that like kind of match your genres. But this recent track, I sent it to like probably dozens of different blogs and stuff, and then they all like will give you feedback. If they like your music, then they can accept it or they can decline it, and more often than not they decline it. So it's a little bit of a sometimes it can really feel like you're just kind of throwing yourself at a brick wall out to these, but I found that it's really just best to, or at least for me, I found the most success when I just like kind of shoot my shot wide and just send it as to as many as I can. And of course
Yes.
there'll be a few that are like this song stinks, like why are you making music that sounds like this? And you just like are okay, like
Yeah.
I guess I'll remember that for next time, not to send
Yeah.
it to them. But
I was listening to your Fridge EP, and one of the songs I can't remember which offhand, but you mentioned about soundtracks, and it really had like a TV track. It was really good, and I think that there's a lot of stuff you're kind of throwing out there, and some of it is, hey, I've kind of heard that before, but then as I'm going along, it's like it's a process of refinement for you, where it's like I can tell that there's a lot of interesting ideas, and I can sense that there's like a strong composition behind it. And so I feel like people just got to be able to accept that when artists are coming up, like they're going to make a lot of stuff. Some of it maybe isn't as great, but it's like over time you continue
sure.
to build and refine.
Yeah, and of course, like I think that the best thing I can do, like as a content creator and an artist, um, and just like every aspect of that sense is just like be learning. So I like the feedback. Like I will always, always, always value like negative feedback, um, because like I would be so silly if I thought that I knew everything about the stuff I'm creating,
Yeah.
that I have the best vision for the potential for these ideas. And so like I always really really appreciate it when people just like kind of help me, like say by saying like, hey, maybe you should kind of consider this more, or like this is um, kind of like a trap to avoid that you're sort of doing with your music. Yeah, it's a very interesting thing to navigate.
So, yeah, we're talking about the process of refinement, and I have to ask, like, have you had like any like professional training or like learning to play the keyboard, that sort of stuff? What's your level of
Oh, yeah,
skill?
yeah. Sure. I actually did jazz for, let's see, I'm trying to think, for like 8 years. I was a
Okay.
jazz guitarist just up until COVID, pretty much. So that's kind of where I learned all of my music theory. And um,
Wow, wow.
so, yeah, that was kind of fun. Unfortunately, like, with jazz and electronic music, or at least the jazz that, you would play in that kind of a setting, like, there's only so much
Yeah,
carryover.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that's kind of like the foundation of just my music knowledge.
Obviously, we're still kind of dealing with some of the effects of COVID, but like moving forward, what are your plans in terms? I mean, do you hope to do like live shows again in the future? What are your thoughts on what holds for and it's sort of like live performance or that sort of thing?
Yeah, I can't wait for. I just got, my second dose of the vaccine this past week.
Which vaccine did you get?
I am Moderna gang
Okay, same here.
all the
Okay,
way.
yeah.
I'm Pfizer.
So, oh, not as cool.
Uh,
Just kidding.
I thought you got
Um,
AstraZeneca, Rubarco.
wait, let me just double check. I've got the card on me. Um, oh yeah,
Yeah,
so AstraZeneca.
because
You knew
she's
better than me.
yeah she's in the UK, so they had that. But yeah, so you were saying you've been
okay.
vaccinated, and
Yeah, so I'm feeling excited for stuff to open back up. I just can't wait. And as far as live performances go, I kind of am a little bit pranked by geography in that aspect. I go to school in a tiny, tiny town in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. So I don't see very many live music acts unless they come to like Grand Rapids or something, and I'm able to make the trip down. And like I've never played like a live show or
wow.
anything like that, which it would be so so cool to be able to do. But just at this point, the opportunity is difficult to find, and
I've heard this characterization from two people who've lived in the Midwest, which I realize is not like a broad survey, but I've heard that the two popular things to do in the Midwest are drinking and hunting. Is that true? Like in where you live, or
that is painfully accurate.
yeah,
Painfully accurate.
damn, that's
I do go to school in a very snowy area. Like we have one of the highest amounts of snowfall in the country, and like we get free access to a skiing hill nearby. Thank goodness for that. Otherwise, I think I would go insane because yeah. Other than that, it's hunting, it's fishing, it's NASCAR, it's yeah, everything that comes along with that.
yeah. What have you been to other states? Or what states have you been to?
Yeah, so I actually was born in Colorado, so I'm from the Colorado Springs area, so I've been out there quite a few times. With my current job, I get to travel a little bit, so I was actually just in Pennsylvania last weekend, kind of on site for a job there. I'm trying to think. I've kind of been around a little bit, been around down south a little bit.
You made it out to California
Like
yet?
Virginia. I have never been to California. I would like to.
Oh man, you gotta make it out here, bro.
All right, all right. Well, if I ever do, you'll be the first to know.
I mean, just from what I hear of the Midwest, there's definitely some cool things like skiing, like that's pretty dope. And there's like some cool stuff, but I feel it's one of those environments where it can get old fast if you're not like really into like certain niches.
Yeah, I think you're definitely 100% correct on that.
Yeah.
To interject, I'm rooting for when you do a UK tour.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I'm
That
sure
would
you
be
could
marvelous.
Support Igloo Ghost or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
At some point.
Yeah, yeah.
Although I think he only
That would be marvelous.
does like local support acts. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, I just need to move to the UK, pretend like I am local, bump into Igloo Ghost at a coffee shop, accidentally drop my thumb drive full of finished music, and then just have him happen to listen to it and then decide to bring me along for a tour. That sounds like my plan.
Good plan. Yeah. I met Igloo Ghost, luckily. It was a year before COVID.
No kidding.
Yeah, I saw him in Leeds. I saw him in Manchester as well, but I met him in Leeds, and just really, really sound guy. I showed him some of my artwork. He was really receptive to it. He was like, "Oh, wicked," when I showed him it. And we got a photo as well. Where is it?
That's so cool.
I might be a while.
But yeah, I know you also did a commission for somebody recently, Rubarcode. It was some artist, but I really like the glossy textures of the characters.
Thank you. Yeah, that was the tour artwork for Benny. Yeah, I wanted it to be like hard-boiled looking, like, yeah, sort of glassy sweets.
And, I also saw you're doing something on Twitch with That Which Crawls. I don't know, maybe you want to kind of promote. I know this is Sloe's episode, but maybe you want to kind of low-key promote your stuff too here.
Yeah, that was a collaborative sort of, I suppose, interview with the musician and my friend. He's a close friend of mine, That Which Crawls. So I made a few music videos for him, and he played some music live, and I did DJing before for the first time. So I used the software called Magic. And it was. I really, really recommend using that if you're interested in sort of taking videos further. It was a really good experience, but a lot went wrong in the sort of technicalities just beforehand. We'll have to see.
Okay.
But it's a start of something, definitely. That was more like a test run. But yeah, I would really recommend if you're interested in kind of performing visuals live.
All right. Well, so Sloe, is there any artist that you'd like to shout out before we wrap things up? Somebody that, maybe is influential to you or you just like as a friend, or maybe any sort of like projects you're working on in the future that you'd like to name drop, anything of that nature?
I'd really encourage anybody just kind of who's been enjoying some of the music so far to just stay tuned. I have a lot in the pipeline, and beginning the process of releasing it. And so if that's your thing, definitely stay tuned. So, but beyond that, yeah, that's about it.
Well, with that in mind, is there any closing remarks you'd like to make, Rubarcode?
Thank you so much, Sloe, for coming on to the show. It's really, really illuminating, and yeah, just really, I really reciprocate your sort of style of working. So it's really, really good to see that.
Yeah, thank you both so much for having me. This has been a ton of fun, and it's really, really fun to talk to people about who understand the struggles and challenges of doing visual art and music. So, yeah, thank you both a ton for just having me, and it's been a great pleasure.
All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for this week's World Movers interview, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. All right, thank you.